All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vicki Lowry, and I'm the Program Director for Vision Loss Alliance of New Jersey. And also with us this evening is Elsa Zavoda, our Senior Vice President of Programs.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And thank you for joining us this evening. And just as a reminder, this program will be recorded. We ask that you please mute yourself, and we will begin momentarily. Welcome to Voices, an educational speaker series sponsored by Vision Loss Alliance of New Jersey. The voices you hear in this series will provide you with information, practical education, tools, and available resources to help you manage tasks in your everyday life. Tonight, we are excited to welcome Douglas Gilbert, Certified Orientation and Mobility Specialist, who will be presenting on the available GPS apps and how they can be helpful to you in orienting and navigating your world. Before we begin, I would like to share Doug's bio with you. Doug's vision loss was detected when he was an infant, and he was also diagnosed with dyslexia at the age of 4 years old. Doug is a graduate of Rutgers University with a degree in the School of Management and Labor Relations. He has been an advocate for the Client Assistance Program, a job developer coordinator for the Adjustment to Vision Loss Program, and a travel instructor for NJ TIP at Rutgers, where he taught students with disabilities how to use public transportation. A recent graduate from Salus University, Doug is now a certified orientation and mobility specialist working for the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Before I formally introduce you to Doug, let's review the Zoom protocol for this evening. Doug encourages and welcomes questions, comments, and discussion. When he cues you and it's time, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature. For those of you who dialed in, the raise your hand feature is *9. *6 will mute and unmute you, giving you the opportunity to ask your question. If you are on a computer, Alt-Y to raise your hand, Alt-A is the mute and unmute command. Using a Mac, Option+Y is the keyboard shortcut to raise or lower your hand. Alt+A will mute and unmute you. Using the Zoom app on the iPad, move to the top right, select the More option, and flick down to the Raise Your Hand. On the iPhone, this feature is located at the bottom of the screen on the right side. And the voice for this evening, Doug Gilbert.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? All right, cool. So what is GPS? What is the Global Positioning System? Basically, what happened is in 1978, thereabouts, the United States started launching a constellation of satellites into orbit. I think there's around 40 that are used by the United States military. There are some other companies that have other constellations. The European Union has their own. I think other militaries have similar products. So basically what happens is you have a receiver. It could be, if you remember the old Garmin's, the TomToms, those things that were mounted on the dash of your automobile. Or it could be your cell phone, or some combination thereof. And then basically what happens is your cell phone tracks 3 of these satellites. It's very technical, but long story short, it basically uses the position of these 3 satellites, and then it triangulates in on where you are. And basically that tells the phone where the phone is in relationship to the satellites, and the satellites know their relationship to the surface of the Earth. And then basically your phone takes that, finds a map, and says, you are here. Very convenient. We don't really need to know too many more details beyond that. But one of the things to realize is that if we're using a dedicated GPS product, we're going to have some kind of access either to the sky or to the internet via Wi-Fi network, or possibly even a cell phone. So this is not going to be good for tomb raiding. No. Right. Any questions or concerns, or does anyone have any thing that they would like me to address before I really take a deep dive into what's going on? No? All right. So GPS was primarily developed for the outdoors, for the military consumer, and of course for people in cars and trucks. You'll say truckers started using it because they could not afford to get lost, because that's money and fuel and a deadline that can be missed. Bad news. With that in mind, a lot of your if you were to go to your app store on your Android or your Apple phone, the vast majority of GPS or navigation products that use the cell phone's GPS capabilities are pretty much transportation related, mostly cars. There are some hiking apps, kind of intriguing, but most of them are automobile related. There are, but the hiking apps, I've tried to use these to actually make like paths of breadcrumbs, so to speak, Hansel and Gretel style, so that I could then transfer that route to someone else. Haven't quite figured that out yet. But if you are looking for trails to hike upon, this could be a pretty good alternative. Indoor travel is a little bit more cumbersome in that there's not a lot of indoor mapping. Now, there are some products, such as Lazarillo, that have made arrangements with a number of universities and I think some shopping malls for them to go inside, let's say, like if you are on Rutgers University in Newark, you have the streets, right? But then they would actually send someone inside to, one of the academic halls or into the whatever building, the administration building. And then they would actually hyper map that kind of place. It's like, oh, here's the dean's office, here's the provost's office, etc. There are also some products that rely on beacon-based travel. These are all, I think, subscriber-based. There's not a lot of these in the States, I found. I think most of them are, in fact, in Europe. And again, that's because you need the geography, you need the location to buy in, and then they have to allow them to set up their beacons, so that you have like a little electronic device somewhere that's like transmitting, here's Forever 21 or here's Vans, The Gap, whatever. So with that in mind, unfortunately, a lot of the products we're going to discuss today just aren't that good for the indoor environment. Questions, concerns before I reach the next part?
Jason called Barbara.
Yeah.
You didn't pick up the phone. He didn't give an ETA. He just
No?
Wait.
All right. I'm going to move on, all right? So I'm primarily going to be talking about GPS on the smartphone because it's very common. A lot of us either have them or have access to them. You do need, for the most part, if you want to go further away than your house, you actually need to have cellular service. These aren't actually dedicated GPS receivers like someone in the military would have, or someone who's going to participate in the sport of geocaching. Also, there's some sporting good, related things, for fishermen and hunters. These are very robust units, very expensive. They're great for finding your way, back to your car if you're in the middle of the marshes, you're duck hunting. Not so ideal if you're trying to find your way around Morristown to find a bakery or something. So the smartphone has a chip in it, uses partially uses the satellites, but it also uses the fact that cell towers are actually in touch with the satellites. And cell towers also have a GPS transmitter in them. I'm not entirely sure why, but bottom line is we're able to piggyback on this technology and we're able to use that to figure out where we are. All right. Now, a couple things before we start using our apps. Okay, well, once you download it, you have to learn a little bit more about it, and that you could learn a lot about that from the app description, but you're going to probably have to mess around with it a little bit to figure out how it works best for you. Depending on your vision, you're going to want to make sure that your accessibility settings are set up. One of the ones that I actually struggle with a little bit, but is probably crucial depending on your level of vision, depending on also how you learn, is using VoiceOver or TalkBack on your Google Android device. Information is useless if you can't access it. So know your modality of how you get information, either visually or through voice or the combination thereof, and make sure you're set up beforehand. Another thing about VoiceOver is a lot of these apps do provide an auditory signal, either a bell or an actual voice saying a address or telling you to turn right. But not all of them do. Hence, you may need VoiceOver. You may have to rely on VoiceOver on some of the apps more so than in other cases. In fact, VoiceOver might be, you may have to disable it for in order to use some of the apps more proficiently and effectively. So yeah, print size. Let's talk headphones, pockets, and lanyards. The position of your phone and how you get your information can be critical to your survival. As an O&M instructor, I am not very fond of anyone having music blasting in your ears, especially if you're traveling outside. With that in mind, having headphones or earbuds in and receiving your directions from your phone, first of all, it keeps your business to yourself. No one else needs to know where you're going turn by turn, not your problem. Also, it could be, as long as you're not playing music, if you do have hearing difficulty, maybe having Siri or whoever let you know it's time to turn right onto Plum Street, that could be beneficial for you. However, as an O&M instructor, make sure you can hear when you're crossing the street. Got to say that. Furthermore, I would like it if everyone was proficient in O&M before you start messing around with these apps. You cannot be distracted by these apps. These are not substitutes for your eyes, for your ears, and for paying attention. You should not be looking at your phone or paying attention to a device while you're crossing the street. Period. Well, no, we're going to get into that. There's one exception, just one. Pockets and lanyard. The position of your phone is really important. Some of the apps, whether your phone is upright, vertical, or parallel to the ground, horizontal, these can make all the difference. This can wake up or put your phone or the app to sleep. GPS apps, mapping apps are incredibly energy intensive. All right, just so you know. So the apps keep this in mind, so they put themselves to sleep if they think you're not using it. So pointing it up and down is critical. Also, the position, the phone, what's the words I'm looking for? The beams, if you are, the way the phone will orient itself for some of the apps so that it knows which direction you're pointing. So compass directions are critical because then it'll say the Burger King is on your right. The laundromat is on your left. Plum Street is to your south, straight ahead, 200 yards. Okay, with that in mind, you may not want to put your phone, in your glove pocket, in your jacket. So for some of the apps, what you may need is you may want to put your phone like in a breast pocket, or have some kind of a lanyard, or something that can hold your phone in an upright position so that the phone is looking forward. And also some of these apps for some applications are actually using the camera for some of these functions. Any questions or concerns? All right, I'm going to move along, right? All right. So what do we have out there? Well, we have a few things that are just totally off the rack. We have Apple Maps and Google Maps. These actually provide reasonably good turn-by-turn directions, even
But there's
for
hot dogs
walkers.
in it without chili.
None for me, thanks. So with that in mind, Google Maps is a little bit more car-centric. Apple Maps can be a little bit more pedestrian-centric. And now I haven't done this in about a year. I have a Dunkin' Donuts in my community. As the crow flies, around half a mile from my house, no big deal. I could do that in my sleep. If I asked Google Maps last year how to go to my local Dunkin' Donuts, so to give you an idea, my community is it's roughly a square. There's a perimeter road that goes around the community, and my community is bisected by a 4-lane highway. So Google Maps would tell me that I have to, and by the way, the Dunkin' Donuts is roughly southeast of me. So Google Maps would tell me to walk north, turn right or east, and then proceed to the highway, and then turn right on the highway, walk approximately 3/4 of a mile down the highway, turn left, cross the highway, and then I'm at my Dunkin' Donuts. By the way, my Dunkin' Donuts is also a gas station, so little sketchy. Apple Maps, on the other hand, routes me along the sidewalks of my community, even taking into consideration a pedestrian bridge that crosses over a lake, through a pedestrian and bicycle tunnel underneath the highway, and then gets me to my Dunkin' Donuts by using sidewalks the rest of the way. All right, so I'm not saying that Google Maps has dropped the ball completely. Google Maps and Apple Maps are both frequently updated. So Google Maps could have caught up to the curve. I'm not sure. However, you have to use, I would suggest using multiple platforms, because whatever they call them algorithms, and I know it's something to do with math, but whatever that is that they do to figure out directions, they're different, and there are differences, and some of them may in fact be better than others. All right, any questions or concerns? All right, I'm going to move along for the time being. All right, we have a couple of apps that I've been actually playing with a little bit. First one is called Voice Vista. This is considered to be the heir to another product that that Microsoft stopped supporting about a year ago, and that is called Microsoft Soundscape. This a lot of these apps are very much like Voice Vista in that they are they're very location specific. If you activate Voice Vista through various different types of modes, you could use it as a pointing mode where it'll say to me that Twin Rivers Drive North is 600 feet to my north. There's a convenience store, approximately 0.4 miles to my northeast. In a slightly busier place, if I was in Philadelphia, if I was in Newton or Morristown, as I'm walking down a primary street, it can say, passing 615 Elm Street, passing 617 Elm Street, passing 619, approaching Plum Street. It can call out compass directions. And you could also plan a trip. But here's the thing. A lot of these apps, if you say, okay, I want to travel by foot from my house to my local diner, a lot of these apps will kind of default right back to Google Maps or Apple Maps. I don't know. Now, Voice Vista, I think they actually encourage you to use it with Apple Maps and or Google Maps. So basically what you would be doing is you would use, let's say, Apple Maps for your actual route. So you would actually enter in your current location and then your destination address. And the Apple Maps will take care of your turn by turn, and Voice Vista will take care of the sightseeing. Now you're passing this candy store. Now you're passing this barber shop. You're now approaching this street. The next street is 50 yards to the west. Yeah, and a lot of these apps, unfortunately, the documentation on Voice Vista isn't the best. And when I tried contacting the developer, they were a little cranky. But with all that in mind, I think it's a pretty good app. It is absolutely worth exploring. And by the way, all these apps I'm mentioning are in fact free. At least I'm pretty sure they're free without additional subscriptions involved. So another reason why I chose these. I don't want you to spend money if you don't have to. I'm going to move along. There's an app called Right Here. I like this app because it's a little bit on the simple side. Again, it also does a lot of the call outs. But I like it. It has a superior trip routing methodology. So if you're taking a walking trip using this app, this one's a little bit simpler if you're not that savvy and if you don't want a lot going on. The controls are nice. I like it. I like it a lot. Good Maps. Good Maps, I haven't really had an opportunity to play with it a lot. There is an indoor mode, and they talk it up a lot, but it does kind of rely, again, on the location to buy into Good Maps and allow somebody to go there. And I'm not sure if it's a beacon system or if they go in there and they hyper accurately map it. So then if you ever get connection to, I think it downloads the map into your device, and then basically it uses regular GPS as long as it has reception to basically use that mapping overlay and go into, and that's how you navigate throughout that. So example, and Lazarillo, similar to Good Maps, but Lazarillo is a bit more, it pops a bit more. It's a little bit fun. It sounds like a slot machine. But for indoor locations, they are also very much about, getting someone to buy into their philosophy, buy into their product, allowing someone to come on and hyper accurately map and indoor space. Their outdoor navigation is pretty good, even though it does default right back to Google Maps or Apple Maps, but their callouts are pretty good. And all these databases, as far as I know, are still growing. Questions? No, nothing? All right. I'm going to move along. All right. So other items, let's talk about how we just travel in general with our smartphone. Okay, your power. Transportation apps, and also transit apps, if you are in fact using New Jersey Transit to purchase tickets for the train or using them to figure out where your bus or train is using departure vision, whatever, they eat up a lot of battery. And in my humble opinion, you need to have enough battery left to make that phone call or maybe summon an Uber ride just in case. With that in mind, if you're traveling outside the home a lot, most of us don't drive. All right. But so we're going to have to carry a charger cable with us. A brick is also good because we may not necessarily have access to a wall outlet. I know, plugging a USB into a wall outlet or the USB-C outlet directly into a wall. I know it's becoming more and more common, but the old Scout motto, you got to be prepared. Let's see here. What else we got going on here? Oops. Get rid of that. Oh, we got to protect our phone. We drop stuff. I drop stuff. I am a klutz. And it shows on my phone that my phone case rather has been thoroughly dinged up. Here, where is that beast? Here we go. Well, it's a clear thing, but yeah, my phone is very chipped and I really, really do need this holder. With that in mind, when traveling outside, we're exposed to the elements, we're exposed to the hot and the cold. That can if it gets too hot, your phone will shut down. And getting too hot for too long or getting too cold for too long will seriously degrade your battery. It absolutely does. So if we're going to rely on this beast, we got to take care of her. All right. That also means water protection, right? Sometimes we're traveling outside in the rain and in the snow, or in New Jersey. Can't avoid it. Would be nice, but if you could avoid traveling in the horrible, great. Those of us who work, not so much. All right. So again, that pocket protector or that lanyard, that could come in handy. So we got to look out for swiper. If we're going to be having our phone out, there are those who may decide to take it. So if possible, again, let's go back to pockets, pockets and lanyards. This is if it's stuffed in here, a little bit harder to grab. If it's right around your neck, that's something that an opportunist isn't going to want to deal with. Just throwing it out there. All right. The one exception to having your phone out when crossing a street. If you're crossing the street, you should otherwise have your guide dog or your cane ready to go, and you should be lane by lane scanning. There are two apps. One is called OKO, OKO, and the other is called Walk Assist. Now, you can use both of these in conjunction with all of these other apps. These other apps will run in the background while you're doing this. OKO is particularly nifty in that if you're at a crosswalk with a pedestrian signal, right, the thing that has like the little walking guy or the red hand, OKO lets you know with an auditory cue what that is. All right. So instead of listening for the surge in traffic, which you probably still should do because you got to know where those cars are. But for those times when you're walking home at 1 in the morning and Main Street's awfully quiet, this could keep you from standing there for half an hour waiting for the cop to come by on patrol. Walk assist. Walk assist does essentially the same thing, but it also supposedly can actually use through the camera mode, not only detect the pedestrian signal, but it can also detect a crosswalk, the painted crosswalk in the street. Theoretically, it should keep you within the crosswalk. I haven't had a lot of success with that one, with that aspect of walk assist, but both OCO and walk assist are pretty good for detecting the pedestrian sign, with one caveat, one little wrinkle. I was using OCO back in the fall in Asbury Park, and it threw me a curve. It was actually reading the red traffic light. This was an older intersection that hasn't been upgraded probably since the 70s or the 80s. And it's Asbury Park, so I could see why. Unfortunately, it's not had a good history, so not a lot of tax revenues there. But it could see the red light and told me not to walk, but it was the red light for my parallel traffic, right? I should have gone with the parallel surge if anyone's done O&M crossing the street with me or ever. No? Yes? Oh, forgot, you're mute. Well, regardless. Anyway, it's worth trying out, especially once you know that there is a ped head there. Okay. So again, if you're going to be using your smartphone, bringing a telescope with you. If you are low vision and you don't necessarily want to use the battery for OCO, maybe you can use a telescope to read that ped head across the street. Maybe you may use that to read other traffic signs and get other environmental cues while you're in the environment while using the smartphone. Let's see here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And again, I'm a little I'm a little obsessed with pockets tonight. So yeah, the right pocket.
Excuse
for the right
me, may I
moment.
ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I know I'm interrupting, but I just wanted to ask a question. This technology is great. So I just was wondering, is there any information as to how successful or how good it is for people that are totally blind? It sounds like it might be more, anyway, just the difference between totally blind persons and those that are partially. How useful is this device?
As far as I know, there really isn't too much literature beyond the customer reviews. And I'm a cynical Gen Xer, so as far as I'm concerned, all of those are a little bit sus. But regardless, the four apps that I've mentioned, Voice Vista, right here. By the way, that's HEAR, not HERE. Good Maps and Lazarillo. These are all designed with the blind consumer in mind. All right, but like I indicated, they're not absolutely designed. They're not necessarily. They might be designed with the blind consumer in mind, but they're not designed necessarily by the blind consumer. Which is why Voice Vista. I think Voice Vista is the one that you should actually have voice over on while you're using that as well. Even Apple Maps and Google Maps, as someone who's totally blind, once you have your walking directions in the path, locked into the, once you have the coordinates locked into the app, as long as you're using good O&M, it does a reasonably good job of getting there. Voice Vista and right here and Good Maps, Lazarillo, these add this extra layer of awareness, by calling out things, like you're now passing this address. This, Main Street is on your left. You're approaching you're approaching, Cameron Street. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
All right,
Did you
cool.
hear me?
Understood. However,
Thank you.
yeah, but from awesome. However, all the with all this in mind, and there are a number of apps that I haven't discussed here. All these apps, you have to try them on for yourself. Because just because it's off the rack doesn't mean it's going to fit you. If anyone's going clothes shopping. All right, so bring your telescope. Okay, and of course, remember the basics and common sense. I do not, as an O&M instructor, I don't introduce these, for the most part, I do not introduce these apps and how to use them until my student is already successfully crossing streets without me. Because you have to have good skills before you're distracted by the phone. And it is a distraction. No way you could church that up. It is a distraction. It is another thing to pay attention to. So if you're not demonstrating good O&M skills, I may not discuss these apps with you. You'll have to find out on the street, the same way I did. But yeah. And of course, for the most part, you really don't want to be distracted while you're crossing a street. You definitely don't want to be, you don't want to be following the blue dot on a map while you're actively walking. That's not what these apps are about. You're going to have to, you have to really use your ears while you're using these apps, even if you have usable sight. And if you're not really good at listening to directions, and most of us dudes are terrible at that, you have to get over yourself and you have to learn. All right, let's open up the floor, shall we?
Okay.
I'm-
Anybody have questions?
I should have said before I spoke. I should have said before I spoke who I am. You see the screen reads that it's Phyllis Bass. I'm not Phyllis. I'm Phyllis's sister, Yolanda Bass. So before I spoke, I should have introduced myself.
Well, awesome. Thank you for introducing yourself. Appreciate that. All right. Anyone else? No? We know where to get to and how to get there?
Don't be shy, everyone. This is your time to ask an O&M. A question that might be burning in the back of your mind for a while now.
Right? Other applications, maybe? Wow.
Melissa has her hand up.
Oh, okay.
Melissa, can you hear us?
Hi, my name is Melissa. My question is about the use of like the Apple Watches. Are they helpful and useful for maybe not paying attention to the phone, or can you use those with some of the apps you mentioned? Apple Maps or right here or the Voice Vista?
So, you can access Google Maps. I believe you can access all those primary navigation aids through an Apple Watch. I'm not sure if all of those apps I mentioned have any Apple Watch connectivity. I'm not certain. But if you think about it this way, if you're using Apple Maps, for example, and you program in the destination by using your Apple Watch, if you are proficient by using that, you know, you still want to have Siri telling you the directions. You know, you do not want to default to your Apple Watch. Oh, sorry, she heard me. Not cheating on you. The girl in the box, we'll call her the girl in the box. Okay, you still need to have the girl in the box talk to you. As far as I know, the watch's speaker is kind of minute, so you may want to supplement that with maybe a wireless earbud, or even better than that would be a bone conductivity headphone, because they do not cover the ear canal. You still have access to the outside. So it's, in some ways, it's an apples and oranges thing. I'm just not entirely sure because I don't have an Apple Watch. I haven't really had an opportunity to use one. I always thought it was a bit small for my purposes. But for the most part, when I teach using the phone, I would tell my students, like, you program in your destination, preferably before leaving the house. But if you have to reconnect, you have to absolutely, stop, get out of the way, preferably with your back to a fence or to a wall. Enter in your coordinates, make sure you're connected, be satisfied that it's the right thing. And then again, place your phone in some kind of a pocket, preferably an interior pocket. Again, making sure that the phone is appropriately positioned for whatever it is you're doing, and then go on your merry way. Does that help?
It does. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have any other questions for Doug? Debbie.
Hi, Doug. Nice to
Hi.
hear someone from New Jersey. I used to live there about 22 years ago. But anyway, what about for locations or destinations that are back from the road? And, will any of these give you directions that are, like, I tried Blind Square a few years back in a shopping, a strip mall. And it was telling me that something was at 2 o'clock, and I knew darn well that it was on my left,
Oh,
as I was walking. So I don't know whether that's because it was picking up on the street address itself based on the road, and I was back from the road. I don't know what was going on there, but do you know if any of these, how they will react in terms of giving you direction when something is back from the road like that? And there's a long driveway to get up there. It's not
So-
like right along the sidewalk. Like
very good, very
yeah.
good question. You're absolutely correct. So there are, yes, that is a common occurrence where your destination is in fact back from the road. There's a few things that could cause that could have been caused by some kind of error, like sunspot activity. Somehow your receiver or whatever, there could have been something shielding in between you and the receiver, throwing it off a bit, because the accuracy of the civilian civilian signals that are available through your phones, or even through things that are available on the market, like at a sporting goods store, for example, they're not incredibly accurate. I think the accuracy is like I think like a couple of, like 6 to 10 feet. So if you're in a dense urban situation, 6 to 10 feet could be a substantial distance.
Sure.
I do believe that you may have, I'm not certain, but you may be correct that, however, the algorithm calculates the street address based on postal codes or census data, whatever that might be. I'm not sure. Yeah, there can be some difference, and that's where our problem solving skills will have to come into play.
Mhm.
Not to mention, if it's our first time, we also have the luxury of what's the word I'm looking for? Street view. We have the luxury of having pictures of our destination. Some of our apps can describe these pictures to us, give us an idea of how far away it is off the ground, or from the road. None of these are a perfect key and lock fix. The technology is just not that hyper accurate yet. And even if someone does, even if your shopping mall or your college campus does a buy-in and allows someone to come on board, and they accurately map the area.
Okay.
So yeah, there's quite a bit of room for error. There absolutely is.
Well, I guess you could always use Be My Eyes or Ira. to,
Oh, absolutely. To
yeah,
get you
that's
for
another. Yeah.
the last dozen feet, absolutely.
Yep.
We during O&M school, anecdotally, just so you know, we did actually try to use Ira to walk us all the way from the lobby of our building to the bus stop. It was a long process, right? Because the operators try to do their job, which is accurately describe your surroundings to you. So that's great in an office building when it's like, hi, I just got off the elevator, I'm on the second
Which way
floor.
do I go? Yeah.
And they say, okay, pan around, find the directory. Oh, you want to go this way for this suite, and pan left, pan right, up, there it is, straight ahead, 3, 2, 1, there's the door. Have a nice day.
Exactly.
So yes, combinations of apps. So you might need Google Maps to get you from your front door to at least the courtyard where your destination is. You may need Ira to walk you from the courtyard into the lobby. And you might also need, and Voice Vista can be great for helping you figure out. It's like, oh, you know what? I passed a pawn shop and a thrift store on my way to this location. These are great. These are
Landmarks.
These are great landmarks. Thank
Right.
you.
Okay. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Pleasure. So I guess one of our other takeaways should be none of these are a perfect fit as of yet for what we're trying to do. All right. Anyone else? Questions, concerns, funny jokes?
I'm muted, sorry. Melissa has another question.
Yes.
Hi, Doug. This is Melissa again. I just have a question about maybe when you're traveling in an Uber situation, or you're not able to see, but you kind of would like to follow along the route as a passenger, maybe for safety reasons or just because you feel a little bit more in control if you can sort of hear the route that the driver is taking, or if it's, you know, somebody you might be out with. Do you recommend just maybe using Google Maps or Apple Maps and typing in the location so you can sort of follow along, or do you have any like safety advice regarding when you're not in control necessarily of like where you're going? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. If you were to, backstop, so for example, if I don't know, if I was traveling from Westfield to the Rahway train station, okay, so I order my Uber, and then to backstop it, I also put in, Rahway train station on Apple Maps. I could, mute the girl in the box, and if I have vision, I could follow the blue line, and if I don't stray from the blue line, everything's fine. Or you could maybe have an earbud in, and you could unmute the girl in the box, and then the girl in the box will give you the turn-by-turn directions. But Voice Vista, for example, if you are in fact familiar with the route, right? So if you're actually, you could actually activate Voice Vista, put an earbud in your ear for privacy, and then you could listen to Voice Vista call out all the sites around you. Now passing this location, proceeding north on this street, now approaching this street, now approaching this other street. So a lot of these maps have a car mode, just so you can, in fact, monitor the trip and maybe even give your driver directions. Like if you're acting as like the backup in the Paris Dakar Valley, or just giving directions to your driver.
Yes.
And there's
What time is it?
also, just so you're also aware, there's also a transit function on most of these apps. So you can, in fact, so once you board a train or a bus, it takes into account the transit route. So does that help?
Yes. And just to go along with that, if you're sort of nervous because you're doing this on your own, maybe the Uber driver or the person driving take a different route, and you're sort of like, well, my route doesn't compute with what they're doing. Like, do you have any advice for trying to be calm and like just kind of going with it? Do you know? I guess.
You're describing some of the scariest events that can happen. First of all, get acquainted with Uber and Lyft's SOS features. There are emergency features on the app. Get acquainted with them. All right. That might even be a worthwhile class, getting acquainted with the bailout features, of a rideshare app. I had an incident about 2 weeks ago where I was taking a very local trip, about 2 miles from my house. And my driver, for reasons I still don't know, decided to get on the New Jersey Turnpike. We had a heated discussion about where he was going. However, he did get off at the appropriate exit. He did turn around. I was monitoring the trip after that. I did notice that the console mounted GPS in his truck, which was sort of like twice the size of an iPad, like the size of a small laptop screen. I think he was using that as his GPS, but I could tell that the highway we were on, it was sort of spinning around and around and around. So yeah, scary situation. And I absolutely don't blame you for activating the emergency feature on the app in a situation like that. Best case scenario, the guy has made a mistake and you just sort it out later. Worst case scenario, you stop the worst case. So yeah, get acquainted with your ride shares bailout emergency function.
And I'm sorry, you had mentioned something about the transportation app, but my computer was reading to me and I didn't hear the last part of the statement that you made about the transportation app.
Oh, so all the dedicated the dedicated apps for people who are blind and visually impaired, Voice Vista, Lazarillo, Right Here, and Good Maps. All of them have an auto feature where you can monitor a trip in a car. They also have a transportation feature where you can monitor your trip on mass transit. That's also part of the planning process. So if you're planning a trip by using a bus, for example, it helps you monitor the trip that way. So that's what I was talking about. It's a way to plan and monitor your trip if you want it to be a dedicated navigator for a mass transit situation.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Wow, I got you riveted.
Any other questions?
Well, don't want to keep you from your dinner.
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Hi, my name is Jay Patel. I have a little question. Which application do you recommend if I have to move around my property and example like a park or something? Is there any good application which you discuss and which will be more helpful?
Well, Mr. Patel, I'm thinking that maybe there are some of these applications for hikers. So what you might be able to do is you could sort of establish like you could actually create walking paths on your property. You can do that. I tried doing that with Voice Vista. You could set up these waypoints. So, but you and maybe someone on a member of your family, you may want to set up these little waypoints, these little travel points. You can also use them indoors, for setting up, you like your own path. They're also great. If you have sidewalks that Apple Maps or Google Maps don't read, can't detect or whatever. So that's a way of setting up breadcrumbs, so to speak, Hansel and Gretel style. I'm not very successful with that myself. So I haven't been able to repeat, but I have been able to do it on occasion, but I just haven't had the opportunity to really repeat my results yet.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Hi,
Doug,
Doug.
could I jump in here?
Hello,
Yeah, can you hear me, Doug?
I can hear you.
Yeah, great. Jonathan Scharf, I appreciate your presentation. I think it was very good. I've got one question for you, just clarification. If I was going to use Voice Vista, do I need to first launch the map application, either Google Maps or Apple Maps, and then launch Voice Vista, or I can just jump into Voice Vista and that'll automatically launch whichever map application that it decides to use?
Oh, I'm going to launch it myself. Siri, open Voice Vista. All right, so
36 feet, facing northwest. 605 Greenwich Court, East Windsor.
so she's already using, I believe, Google Maps as her primary platform. I believe you can change that. So what's available right now, from Voice Vista is primarily the callouts. Their trip planning, in my opinion, is not the best, which is why I think that what you may want to do is Voice Vista is great for perceiving the sites around you. But you may want to have Google Maps with your coordinates. So you don't have to do it first, but definitely before you start walking, you want to have your coordinates loaded in.
Okay. So both apps will be operating simultaneously, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Now that's not to say that Voice Vista can't you can't do a route, but I find it a little bit more cumbersome than the other two off the rack, off the shelf items, Google Maps and Apple Maps.
Okay. So Voice Vista then it's a supplement for Apple Maps. It's not a replacement for it.
That's my inclination. So, like, for example, I'm on the main page, and so the top app, let me activate VoiceOver. Come on, you. Oops. Sorry. Bear with me, guys. There we go. There we go. And
VoiceOver, what's ahead of me? What's my sleep button? What's my location button?
all right.
Actions available.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
What's my location? Facing west. Nearest road, Greenwich Court, is 90 feet behind. Sports field is 575 feet ahead to the right.
All right. So that's because my phone is dependent on the fact that my phone is upright. Okay. And it's actually facing to my left. If I turn my phone and I activate the same feature, come on, you.
Facing north. Nearest road, Greenwich Court, is 110 feet ahead to the right. Sports field is 560 feet ahead to the left. 605 Greenwich Court.
All right. So it called out my address, the street I was on, but it actually changed direction. All right. So now I'm going to go to the next feature down.
Button.
Okay.
Actions available. What's around me? Button.
Did you hear that? That's what's around me.
Yep.
Red Wagon Farm, store 0.58 miles ahead. Lions Heating and Air Conditioning LLC, HVAC services, 665 feet ahead to the right. Crosswalk, 785 feet to the right. Pitch, 565 feet behind.
Now, Voice Vista, they also try to give you a, I'm sorry?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What's ahead of me? Button.
Okay, and then,
Actions available.
and now here's the third action I'm going to demonstrate for you.
What's ahead of me? Button.
So that's,
Actions available.
so now if I'm going to point the phone roughly west from my location.
What's ahead of me? Pitch, 570 feet ahead. Pitch, 620 feet ahead. Pitch, 665 feet ahead. Pitch, 715 feet ahead. Marker, near Twin Rivers Drive North, 805 feet ahead to the right.
So we just have a couple of soccer fields that they just installed on the schoolyard. So that's the that's the pitch that they're talking about.
Nice.
Right. So so like I said, these most of these apps, at least for our community, do not really work well in isolation, right? We have to double check our locations whenever we're planning a trip. You should always double check your location, especially because the routing information, the routing algorithms the routing algorithms are different, so they might choose different things for different things.
8:05 p.m.
1 second, let me get rid of her.
Accessible live map read smart invert speak screen selected voiceover off.
There we go. Well, that didn't sound good. So yeah, so once you get your route settled up, and again, some of these apps do make pretty good routing options as well. Each app is different. I would try different apps with different students to see how they interact with it. You know, different, slightly different interface options. So yeah, this is not a cookie cutter operation. It really
Okay.
isn't. And they're constantly coming out with new options, although I haven't seen one in a couple of months.
Okay, that's good. So I'll give it a shot then. And any recommendations for country walking? You know, where there's not curbs or the like?
Nothing really at this time. I'm thinking that some of the hiking apps that they have out there, now a lot of them they're all about the established trails and routes within certain parks and such, but some of them you can actually create your own path, or you can actually, people can share their hiking paths with you, and then you can do it like that. But a lot of the apps are very good at cardinal directions, and at least letting you know, it's like, well, I'm in the middle of a field, but I know that it's like, oh, Route 22 is, 850 feet, straight ahead of me, so at least you know that.
That's good. Well, listen, I appreciate your input. That clarifies a lot for me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're not going to want to use this if you're navigating Death Valley.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Thanks, Doug.
Sure.
And Doug, Alicia has her hand raised.
Hi, Alicia.
Hi, Doug. I have a question more about the Lazarillo app. I'm more familiar with that one, but are there any other ones that may be like similar to that one? Because I know that one kind of like eats up your battery and your data, so I don't use that one as much, even though I like that app. So are any of the other ones a little less,
No, unfortunately not. They are all energy hogs and they're all data pigs.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's the nature of the beast. I mean, if you can get onto Wi-Fi and use it, then at least you have that. But yeah, you're still burning a lot of power.
Okay.
Right.
So?
Does anybody else have any questions? Last call.
Doug, it's Peggy. What about Soundscape?
So Soundscape is still operational as far as I know. Let me see. It is one of my faves. I really do like it. Siri, open Soundscape. Yep, we're still operational.
Marker 605 Greenwich Court.
Unfortunately, you can't download it anymore from the App Store. So
I thought they had changed it and you could now, but maybe I'm wrong.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I thought someone else took it over.
That's called Voice Vista. They took over most of the code. I'm not sure if that works. But you know, this is Soundscape is working offline when there is an all right, for whatever reason, my Soundscape is not quite working at the moment. But as far as I know, it is in fact still functional. So if you have been using it, should still be operational, but do not delete it if you like it.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Now, unfortunately, a time's going to come when they update the phone as a whole, and it's going to stop working. All right. So just be aware of that. The end could be nigh unless they figured out a way around that. I'm not sure. But one thing that Soundscape and Voice Vista have in common is their interface is pretty easy. You know, it's very simple. There's not a lot of bells and whistles going on.
Well, thank you, Doug. This was very informative. And nobody else has any questions before we wrap up? Okay, well, I thank everyone for joining us, and thank you to Doug. And as a reminder, please subscribe to our VLANJ YouTube channel. You can hear this and all of our other virtual presentations. And I hope everyone has a wonderful night and stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
again,
night,
Doug.
everyone.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank
Good
you for joining
night.
us
Thank you, Doug.
again. Thank you, Doug.
Bye. See you
Thank you.
soon.
Good presentation.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Buenas noches.